Imagine this, you're just about to walk into a meeting and all of a sudden a personal grievance claim lands on your desk. What do you do? Today I wanted to tackle everything that you need to know when you are going out and seeking legal advice so that you have the right representative for you. If you are somebody that hasn't actually looked at going to a lawyer, or maybe you use external legal and you actually want to make sure that you are getting the most bang for your buck, then this episode is just for you. Hi everyone, welcome back to Lawlands. My name is Sanam and thank you so much for tuning in to the Employment Law Done Right podcast. Well. Looking for representation, are we? It is hard. I know how difficult it is, and a lot of people don't believe me that one of the most common questions I get is, which lawyer do I go to? Who can I get advice from? And what is the difference between a lawyer and an advocate? Should I go to one or the other? Is one better than the other? There's so many questions that come up around this area. And I did the HR HQ live conference, and at the conference, one of the areas that I spoke about, which I am very passionate about, is how to make sure that you communicate like you're a lawyer, or communicate in a way which has that gravitas a lawyer has. And that extends as far as also going to a lawyer to seek legal advice. And no, of course, you're not meant to be going out and learning all the ins and outs, but it's mostly making sure that when you go out and get representation, or you're dealing with external legal or an advocate, that you are able to go to them very direct with a very succinct amount of information around exactly what you need done and what you need covered. And of course, if they need more information, they will ask you for that information. But the worst thing that I see it time and time again is when people go to a lawyer, whether it's HR professionals all the way through to employers, they are just giving them all this word vomit and diarrhea, and the lawyer is having to sit there and decipher. So I wanted to give you a bit of the other side of things. But before we do, I just wanted to say thank you so much to everyone listening to the podcast. You know the drill. If you're not following the podcast, and I know there's a lot of you out there, then please hit that follow button so that you get these episodes straight to your phones. And of course, if you want anything in particular, then let me know, and I am more than happy to chat about it in one of the episodes, and we can even keep it anonymous. If you are interested, then please reach out. The email is in the show notes down below. All right, let's dive in, because we want to have a look at how to find the right person. Like I said, there's lots of different types of representatives. Some people go to HR consultants, and the consultants will actually help them almost all through the way, except for at the Employment Relations Authority. Some people will want a lawyer to represent them throughout. Some people go to advocates. So it really depends on what you want to do. Now, finding the right person, look, keep in mind that not all representatives are created equal. In New Zealand, if someone wants to call themselves a lawyer, then they hold a practicing certificate from the Law Society. So if they don't have a practicing certificate, then they're not actually a practicing lawyer. So that's a key part, and that's your first checkpoint. A lot of times you will see advocates, for example, have that they are an enrolled barrister or solicitor. That just means that at some point they finished their law degree and they applied to the higher court to basically say that one day, if they wanted to have their practicing certificate, that they could do that, and that they are enrolled in the system but not necessarily practicing. So when I say advocate, what do I mean? There's slightly a different story to lawyers. Most advocates, if not all, don't hold a practicing certificate. I'm yet to find one that does, so if there is one out there, please don't come for me. And the way that they operate is that they can still represent you in certain areas. So employment disputes, ACC claims, and it is something that's been accepted and allowed in New Zealand. There's nothing barring them from representing. But what I would say, and again, this might not sit right with everyone, but I try to shoot straight from the hip and I try to make it very direct, is that some advocates will be amazing and others not so much. And the same thing goes for lawyers, but something to keep in mind is that they're not subject to the same rules or complaints processes as what lawyers are. If you go to a lawyer, you're paying for both the expertise and also the protections wrapped around the particular advice. If you go to an advocate, you might get the practical help you need, but you might not necessarily have that safety net if something goes wrong. And why do I say that? Because when you work in a law firm and when you work with lawyers, you are heavily scrutinized on your work. I don't believe the same is there for advocates. And I'll tell you why. There has only been one or two circumstances in my entire career where a lawyer did a huge blunder in a document. I'll give you an example. One time they were claiming lost wages and the lawyer ended up turning around and leaving a note in there by mistake in their personal grievance claim, which said, just to confirm, were you driving Uber during this time? And we were representing the employer. And as they were representing the employee, they had put their foot in it that there was no lost wages. So you can see where it can go wrong. But I've only seen that, like I said, once or twice by a lawyer. When it comes to an advocate, time and time again, I have unfortunately had the wrath of an advocate in terms of making processes difficult, trying to bombard with emails to try to get things over the line, or even to the point where they've quoted the wrong legislation in their personal grievance claims. They've also referred to their client with the incorrect name as well as the incorrect pronouns. There's just so many things that I've seen time and time again that advocates always seem to tick this box for me where it's, ooh, these guys might be a bit difficult to work with. Now, I've never gone to an advocate for advice specifically, and a lot of them there are no win, no fee. So that's why they seem a lot more of a lucrative option for employees. But I would say proceed with caution if you are an employer, because while I've seen a lot of advocates say that they represent employers and they are there to help provide support to both employers and employees, the way that I've seen their content, the way that I've seen their websites, the way that I've seen them portray themselves is very employee centric. And I don't know, it just doesn't sit right with me. I like to be my employer friendly side. I'm here to support you guys. I'm here to make sure that you are proactive, have better practices. I just don't see that from the advocate side. But again, it is up to you. So if you want to find somebody in your area when it comes to an advocate, really easy, do a bit of Googling. Don't get trapped in the no win, no fee. I really understand what that means and what that's going to mean for your business, especially if there is a lot of risks for you. So just don't get caught up in that no win, no fee. And when it comes to a lawyer that's an employment lawyer, when you're buying a house, you generally need a property lawyer. When you've got an employment dispute, you need an employment lawyer. So where do you go? The best place to go is actually the Law Society's website has a find a lawyer, and it effectively allows you to go in there and find a lawyer in your area, a lawyer that's working within that practice. Now, I'll put that in the description or in the show notes below. But aside from that, you can actually just do a little bit of Googling. A few firms that I generally like and I rate, not that I've necessarily worked with them on employment law matters, but more so that I've seen their work with other matters, or maybe I've been up against them, is Hesketh Henry. Definitely Lane Neve is amazing as well. You've also got Edward Sluter's lawyers who are great employment law specialists. Know that when you are going to a lawyer, they will cost a little bit more. Just keep that in mind. Now, the next thing is, what do you actually tell a lawyer or representative or an advocate? Look, we don't know what we don't know, right? We don't know what's happened. And our job as lawyers is to dig and find out what actually is going on. So the best thing I can say is lawyers love context. We love to know what has happened and the facts surrounding what's gone on. And that doesn't mean we want 30 pages of that information, but I'll get into some methods that you can use to really hone in and focus on what you need to get out of that lawyer. Make sure that when you're going to a lawyer or a representative, you're bringing your key documents, your contracts, your letters. There's a lot of times I've noticed that employees, when I'm representing the employer, the employee will go to an advocate and the advocate will say that this particular document was sent to the employee on this date and all of these things. And what I've found is that usually that information is incorrect, because what they actually have is a few documents to work off of. And the reality is that probably the employee actually hasn't provided it to them yet. They've just quickly kicked up the matter and they've started on sending out the comms. So that's why it's important to make sure that you write down a timeline of the events and what you are trying to achieve. What is your goal? That way you're not scrambling when they ask you about a meeting that maybe came up in July or August and you can't remember if it was the 3rd or the 13th and you're all over the place, right? So you want to be able to contain it as much as possible. And when I said that I'll give you some methods that you can use, the first one, and this is what I spoke about at the conference as well, is something called the SOAR method, SOAR. The SOAR method is used in other areas, I believe in interviewing and things like that. But I believe, and I use this regularly when I speak to external legal, because in my day job, I still talk to lawyers outside of my jurisdiction. I still talk to lawyers outside of the company as well. And then that means that I can make sure that one, I keep costs low, and I also get the answers that I'm looking for and give as much context as needed, but not so much that it starts racking up those costs. So the SOAR method, and the reason why it's SOAR, is situation, objective, actions, and results. So the situation is what's happened, what actually went wrong. So let's say that you've got a situation where the employee has been invited to a performance management meeting. Let's say you're in part of the PIP process and the employees turned around and pulled out a mental health reasoning or the mental health angle. If that is the case, then you need to lay out what has happened so far, so that you met with the employee on this date, you started the process there, then you moved into the next date and you did a meeting on this particular date. And as you can tell, you're going down line by line and putting together a timeline with a bit of context as well around what was done and what was the outcome. Important things usually that we like to draw out as lawyers would be things like, was there a weird spanner thrown in? Things like the employee turning around and saying that they've been bullied in the workplace, that they've been mistreated, that they've been disadvantaged by being given tons of work, or maybe that they've been suffering from mental health concerns or suffering from something in their personal life. Has that been brought up and has that been thrown around? Not because the lawyer is going to go, that's been brought up, so that means we're putting a halt to the process. Absolutely not. No, this is about making sure that the lawyer has the full picture, the full context, and the person understands where you're coming from and what's been done, so that they know, look, this might be an angle that we don't entertain, or maybe we do entertain it, but then we branch off into this direction instead. So what happened is really important. And then the next thing is objective. What do you actually want? I've had so many times where an employer will come to me and go, look, Sanam, it's a matter of principle. I don't want to pay this employee a single cent. I completely get it. I understand why. They could be a feral employee, and I can say that because they exist. And you're probably thinking, what do I do? Why would I want them to be there? And that's where having that objective and that outcome that you're actually looking for is critical for the lawyer, because they could be suggesting something super risk averse. They're saying things like, look, you need to turn around and make sure that you meet with the employee, do X, Y, and Z. And you'd be sitting there going, no, that's not what I want at all. And so that's why it's important for everyone to be on the same page. And the only way that's possible is by you saying what you want. And then the lawyer or the representative, whoever it is, can come back with many different options. And then the next thing is actions. What's actually been done so far? What have you done to make sure that you've mitigated risk, or maybe there's been certain things that have happened that have added to risk? Be honest. Don't hide anything. We get no benefit from you not telling us information. We, as lawyers, I think people watch these movies, and unfortunately the cinema has not helped, lawyers in any capacity. I see in movies all the time, people don't tell their lawyer exactly what they've done or what's going on. The reality is, don't do that when it comes to your actual representative, because they should know what's going on and how they can work around ways to fix it. And the last thing is results. So after you've done everything in terms of the situation, what's happened, what you were looking for, what you've done so far, the last thing is results. What's happened because of those actions? Did the employee raise a personal grievance? Did the employee say that they're bringing a lawyer? What's actually going on? And when you follow that SOAR method, that situation, objective, actions, and results, it keeps the conversation structured, it keeps it clear, and it keeps it efficient. Something I learned very early on, this was before I became a lawyer and I got into law. This was when I was working in advisory. One of the things that I got told was, Sanam, it's not cheap going to external legal for advice. So you cannot be sending massive long emails to them, telling them everything that's happened and hoping that they come back with the answer that you're looking for. You need to really contain it, and you need to have very specific questions that you ask them. And so that is critical here, is as part of the SOAR method, also have your critical questions that you need answered, and make sure they're questions that you've truly considered that you're looking for. And they're not questions that are going to be very baseless or questions that are going to be too broad. You really want to focus and hone in. The last thing that I would say is maximizing your time is critical. Making sure that you are going in there and getting the most bang for your buck is the way that I explain it, because lawyers charge for time. They are one of the only people that charge based on those 6-minute increments. And what that means is that time ticks up really quickly. I used to have clients all the time when I was working in private practice call up and just rant and rant. And then they would get so pissed off when their bill used to be thousands of dollars. And it's solely because they picked up the phone and they would talk to me about how awful the situation was. In advisory, I completely get it. You know, you're paying your flat subscription fee. You call whenever you want. But when it is a law firm, please don't call the lawyer consistently to be ranting and complaining about certain things, because it's just going to cost you a lot more. And what would happen? People would get pissed off. Clients would go, I'm not paying that. That's ridiculous. Why were you on the phone with me for an hour and a half? Well, I don't know. I guess I'm just there for emotional support. Instead, for you, I say, let me help you out. Make sure that you are on time when you are meeting with your lawyer. Stick to the facts. Use that SAW method. Have your questions ready. Ask questions about fees. Ask questions about next steps and what's likely going to come up next. And by the end of your first meeting, you should be able to walk out knowing what your lawyer will do next, what you need to do, and what the costs are likely to be. Never walk out of your first consultation meeting, which is usually for free, or it's a very minimal amount that you're paying compared to the lawyer's fees. Make sure that you walk away knowing what you are paying for, what you're going to get, and where the situation is going to go. So my final thoughts are: preparation will save you a lot of money. Clarity, it builds a level of trust and also makes the lawyer aware of the fact that you know what you're doing, especially if you're a HR professional. Small employer, completely understand. First time you're doing the process. Somebody that's in HR that's working for a larger company, you might have a team and you need to go to external legal. You know what you're talking about. So lay it all out. Make sure that they know that you know what you're mentioning and what you're talking about. And like I said, a little structure will go a long way in turning a scary legal issue into something that has a clear action plan. You know exactly what you're going to do and you know what's next for you and your business. So that is it for me, everyone. Next time you need legal advice, I hope that you can walk in there and feel like you're a pro, you're not panicked. Never panic when you're dealing with these situations. As much as the other side, sometimes you'll have a lawyer involved. They might be barreling down and going, no, this is wrong. We've got to do this. You're delaying. You're doing this and that. You are well within your right to go and get legal advice. You are well within your right to take a little bit of time to find the person that's going to represent you. So please never feel like you are pushed and backed into a corner. Please make sure that you're in a situation where you feel like you have a level of control as well. I hope that if you are going out and getting legal advice, those representatives have been great and they haven't been too crazy. Well, that is it for me, everyone. Thank you so much. I just want to say again, make sure that you follow the podcast, sign up to the Law Lens newsletter if you haven't. It's called Compliance Through the Chaos, and we are all about making sure that you are navigating your workplaces with confidence, with ease, because employment law is dry, but it doesn't have to be that dry and it doesn't have to be scary. So I hope everyone's having a lovely evening, morning, day, night, whatever it may be, and I'll catch you in the next one, everyone.